Hello, Internet. What you see on the screen on the left is a funky, I think it's a street view photo or something like that, that a friend of mine posted. Oh, what happened to my post? I always like to look at people's names before I try to say them because that's often an issue. So, Going Cold, I think it's pronounced Niall Eccles. I'm not sure if I got that right now. And I don't think it's Niles, it's Nils. Nils. Oh, I can't remember now. And that's the thing, I need to kind of see it. This is my weird brain. I was just talking about. Where'd it go? Instagram. Flip the page away from me. I have to look up. So searching will help. So not always a little thrown by. I don't know if I can pull it up to check, so I'm gonna have to hope I got that right. He posted this picture of a weird truncated car. It's a weird, cool car. It's an asymmetrical tricycle. That's the first thing that came to mind, and I started having some fun non sensory emulating ideas, but also just wanted to draw the shape. Just before I hit record, I was thinking I need to reposition. Nice thing about digital is if I get that wrong, I can easily move the work. And so what I'm doing is it's a form of speed drawing, gesture. It's informed by some analytical drawing as well, structure and perspective, but I try to execute all the mark making with a very gestural mark. I'll slow down for finer details, but I want to have a lot of energy in my line, as well as have control. You want to balance these things. So I'm pretty sure that's not the shape I see on the real weird distorted thing, but I'm actually totally looking to make this into, like, first thing I want to do is make the actual science fiction vehicle that I saw when I saw Nils. Oh Christ, I'm having spasms of doubt about. So, like, the context, we go way back to the comic jams. Used to hang out a lot. I've been a guest of his in Picton, where he's based now. Does the comic jams. I know a person well. So, like I was saying before in the last video, it's like, you know, it can be my mother, and I will have these moments where, especially with, like, if it's a name I don't use very often out loud, then I will completely forget names or lose them at any rate. Usually when I hear it again, I feel like it's got to be in there somewhere because it immediately feels familiar when I hear it again. It's not like I've never heard it before, but I will lose track of the place in the library in my brain that it must be in. And that's a generous metaphor, let's say, because it's not really much of a library. That's too sensory emulating. that detail on the door. I don't know if we'll keep it. Some sort of like ridge thing happening. A little roof unit. And it's going to have yeah, okay. I was thinking there for a minute we'll just have 3 windows, but I've already drawn in. It's supposed to be the front. Need a little more angle on that. One of the things I see the most when I look at students' art and people just starting out getting into animation and professional drawing is patience and leaving things a little underbaked. And I know that there's like a flip side to that. So for some students, they just don't have the time to execute as much, to practice as much. But I still feel like in terms of the learning, you want to try to make time to get in there and get to it somehow. You know, fully acknowledging that that can be a challenge for some people if you've got jobs or school or something else going on. And I think in the end, that's like I was saying in the last video that imagining that you have a lack of imagination takes some considerable amount of imagining. And imagination is just the act of conceptualizing things. It's not specifically visual necessarily. Like even for visualizers, it's a mix, and that will include some just thoughts, having thought things non-linguistically. I think some people are very unaware of the degree to which they may in fact have non-verbal thoughts. They may not occupy the attention enough to rise above it's an ice car. You know what though? I can make this whatever I want. I'm not going to give it an exhaust pipe. It will not be a nice car. I don't know what it is, but that front wheel is too big. So the whole underbaked thing I just said, oh, I'm going to change that selection method. I forget. I was going to look into how. Leaving things underbaked is a real pitfall. So I like to move quickly in the process of drawing, but I spend, considerable amount of time. Not too much. You do need to be fast, but within reason, fast and crappy just ain't gonna cut it. A little bit slower but good will. Not unreasonably slow. I still have to make my deadlines, but just being fast shouldn't be the focus. And if it's a question of patience, then making sure to be mindful of, oops, that did not take. I thought I was on selection. Being mindful of the time it takes to do things. And if you do the math and find that, well, Max, it's just not economically sustainable for me to spend more time on the work. Yeah, that's a thing. Sucks, but the answer isn't necessarily more careless work. It means simpler work. So you want to work towards, and it does take some effort and care, more elegance. But ultimately, just by curating and designing the work better, and then the actual rendering. Like I try to curate and design well too, but I'm inclined to go for a lot of fine detail. in my own stuff, I'm saying. And for commercial stuff, I have to rack back the detail, but I don't rack back the care I take in the drafting, just the amount of information I pack in. And it's a challenge. Like, I'm still shifting after doing my own thing and on my own terms. I still have days where I sit down at the desk to do the work I'm doing now and finding it, having to rein myself back in, or if I don't, getting notes for revisions that are pretty much, I immediately recognize, oh yeah, yep, I did a little too much of that thing in it. It's like a weird, the proportions feel too, I don't know, puffy. And I would work very light and use, did that not select? Oh, I was on eraser mode. I'm going to do my erasing. There we go. I would spend more time loosely but lightly. Oops, wrong button. Loosely but lightly revising, trying to find, and the marks you make should start with enough study and stuff. When you're training your eye, you should start to be able to kind of like feel when they're getting closer to the right place. And so I use the metaphor of seeing it as it happens on the page, because it sort of falls into where it is, or feeling it, because I can sense when the sort of like proprioception, like, so the way you look at another thing, I can kind of feel it. So maybe it has something to do with mirror neurons, relatively new discovery, but that tactile feeling almost of things being in the right place. I think it's the same thing that makes when people do those things fitting in things videos and people get off on it. I think we're talking about the same things feeling right. And then you need the motor control skills to put the mark in the place that feels right. Those are two of the identifiable skills that go into good sketching and rendering, and the draftsmanship side of it, control. There's some people who really like to strive to do that in one mark, which is cool. We could try to do that, but I find it impractical and highly stressful. And more practical is definitely an efficiency. You don't want to make all the marks, and you don't want to the marks should not be repeating themselves or repeating their mistakes. You should be learning from the marks and listening to them and letting them tell you where they need to be to feel right. Like now, I'm playing with the warp proportions and distortions and inventing a thing that didn't really exist before, but did. We've seen things like it, and I'm just riffing on the Rorschach ink blot of a car warped by multi-camera built images. Which is an interesting thing. So like the way Google Street View sees the world, I've used it in school classes for virtual plein air as a way to study, but I think maybe I didn't mention enough that you'd want to be aware of this sort of weird warping, because I think I could have talked about it more as also sometimes a good thing, like I'm using it as a source of inspiration for this trippy hot rod sports car thingy tricycle. But I did talk about it in terms of it has a weird perspective. So they invert the usual angles of more common curvilinear perspective of space to when they stitch the pictures together. I think the term's used sometimes, but I would kind of raise question with the nomenclature. Nomenclature? Is it nomenclature? The correct perspective distortion. But I don't think it's really correcting. But the result is that they interestingly skew and straighten out the way curvilinear space works. So it's actually still kind of flat linear. It's not true curvilinear. But they can then map it into a polygon spherical dome for space. Just something I feel is important to mention to my students, because I'm asking them to, hey, use this as if you can't get to Paris, you can still do plein air from Paris, because you can go to Street View. It's virtual plein air. I know it's not the exact same thing. There's a whole bunch of philosophical sides to the idea of plein air. I think some of them have interesting things to say, but I don't, the more supernatural, spiritual stuff I don't subscribe to. So I might use this somewhere. I don't know. I think it needs some developing still, but as a first pass of an idea, it's kind of fun. So let's play with, I'm going to make that blue and I want a little heavier line. Right now I'm ghost drawing. You can probably see in the little, get my arm out of the way, the little drawing. I'm kind of playing with tracing over the drawing, trying to find paths that come innately out of the shape. So when we talk about design and refining ideas, that's one strategy I just used there. It's actually pretty common. A fair number of aerodynamic features came from a combination of innovating between, so as people studied airflow, they started getting strong ideas that informed their aesthetics about how you would shape something to move through the air. And a lot of it was more intuitive than tested at first. You would try out. Well, this is like how science works. You have a hypothesis and you try it out. And a lot of engineering at early stages works the same way. I want to move the wheel up. That would be interesting. But also, like, more engineering-wise, lower and more spread out is the better design. I think I will do that first thought I had. So it's just 2 windows on front. And they come down to a single interesting. Yeah, so it would be like that. So I just talked this week in my art class about drawing monsters, and I mentioned an idea, and I'm basically applying the same principle here. There it was about creatures, but here it's engineering, imagining, making up a vehicle that doesn't exist. So I started with an interesting kind of jumping off point, the weird photo from the street, and trying to do the thing that came to me that was the most obvious, which was sort of a literal rationalization of the weird warped distorted image. I hope Niles does one too. It would be cool to see, because he does amazing drawings. Brilliantly talented. Let me see. I've been talking about. I was looking at my phone before and I could not successfully call up the visual. And I know where I can find Jam. Prince Edward County. Internet has decided to be slow now. There we go. Okay, so I'm not imagining or spelling it wrong. Here's a post. Right. Mention it by name. They changed their group name. I think they got rid of the X, so it was a C, right? I swear, sometimes I go to search for something, and it's like it seems to happen to me specifically when my brain gaps out too. And I go to search online, and it's like the online is having the same breakdown. It's the Mandela effect. I imagined it all. I don't have an old friend in Picton, Ontario, who makes amazing kids comics. Comics in general. Stuff I've seen from the most recently is a lot of it's in like, what's that? Is it Owl Magazine? I think it's called Owl Magazine. My mother worked on Owl Magazine when I was a kid. So here's my hot rod. I think I will make drawing hot rods a thing we do this semester. I'm thinking for intro to cartooning, because we can't do things like I used to do, like one class we would just sit and draw caricatures of each other as a way to practice caricature, do portraits and caricature. and that was fun. But we can't really do that as well on Zoom. Pictures are too small. People move around too much in the first place, but I can't go around harassing them to sit still for each other when we're on Zoom nearly as effectively. It would just be rude. Hey you! Stop moving. I make a bit of a joke of it, and it's silly in class, but I also try to get them to sit still for each other and show them some tricks of how to draw while also trying not to move. So you're all, I would pair them up. So people drawing each other at the same time. It's a good challenge because it is like a little bit of a patting your head, rubbing your belly at the same time thing. Get your brain to do what you need it to do. And I'm sure some people find those specific kinds of tasks a little more challenging. That's a weird chippy little thing. Here, let's move this out of the way. We don't need that anymore. You're just going to be at the back of the single seat. And this is fun for like putting online and showing process. I might include it in a portfolio with a finished version of itself, but it's not finished work that I would present. I think it's gonna, from above, it's going to be something like and then it's got a wide mouth, but it does something unexpected. But it is asymmetrical. I think the cowling that I came up with the two windows right, complex, weird dance of shapes. I love it. And then this is also asymmetrical because it's a trike. It's fucking fucked up. That's probably why language like that, man. That's probably why they demonetize some of my videos. Talk like a sailor. What can I say? And then that's a wheel, and that's an open. It's getting too symmetrical, and it doesn't really leave enough room for like the sidecar-like thing I want over there. Imagining. Mm-hmm. Yeah, break the line. And if I was designing things, designing character, designing props, there are time constraints, but I would definitely spend probably at least 5 times the amount of time that I'm going to be doing this video. Just sort of generating. Depends on the thing. Like when I'm doing props for the show right now, a lot of these things I don't have to design because they already exist in the world. Telephones from the early mid 80s, and a lot of 70s stuff too, because there's a lot of 70s left over in the world in the mid 80s. Not everyone threw everything away right away, all the time. I think I want to, put a little bit of a swing in it. There we go. There's that other wheel. And then this is going to be its own little sidecar thingy. I don't know. It was just fun. Just having some fun. Generating. A certain amount of generating, like, if you're going to get good at drawing, people kind of talk about it. You kind of have to draw all the time. It's not a lie. It's no lie. You kind of do. After years of it and doing stuff commercially, you will go through periods of not really wanting to draw outside of the day job. Or just all of your drawing energy going into that. And that's normal. But when you're starting out, that's totally not normal. Once you're getting kind of burnt out, and well, pace yourself. But you do want to be spending more time developing ideas, doing exercises designed to develop specific technical skills, and work longer at refining things. You'll get fast later, but you have to refine the skills, and that doesn't necessarily mean going slow. It means taking more time, putting more care into it. I like using a quick gestural line, but then I do what I'm doing now, which is I hone and edit. It's like the saying about writing, where most of writing is editing, revising. Same goes for art. For the best of it, a lot of it is in the revising and revisiting and thinking about some dials in there. I put a swoop in. Yeah. So how does that? That's the thing that goes up and into that. That's got to be up into there. Need some clearance. Yeah, that's not very practical, but we got one messy windshield. But that's not what this is about. This is one of them concept cars. So if that's coming out, it goes into there. You actually wouldn't see this edge, but I do like that angle. Right, so just clarify that. It's still a rough line, but I want to get to the point where I've got a clean mark. And then where does Yeah, it's more like that. It's like symmetrical venting around the nose. Let's clean up the compound curve of this chassis. Oops, white lines. No, there we go. So you want to get a better curve. Remember to rotate your paper into the geometry that suits the movement of your wrist, or for bigger curves, the movement of your upper arm, digitally or on paper. The only place where it doesn't matter, not doesn't matter, but it's not doable actually digitally would be if you're working on an a blind tablet, or just like an old Wacom pad. There's some good symmetry tools built into this program that I could stop to use, but the exercise here is practicing the skills. I actually use the circle tools and the symmetry tools, the rulers in Clip Studio a lot for my day job, because it just helps and they need that kind of precision. It still needs to be a fairly organic line, but yeah. But I want to maintain my drafting skills as well. That's kind of interesting. I might use that. And the New Armageddon Blues, it's a comic that I've been working on. One of the things going into Mind Engine. I have a lot of trippy. Let's show you. Do that. Let's go to here and do this, and then I believe. So that's not it. No. Okay. Give me a second. Here we go. So that let me just move it over here. Go. There we go. There she blows. So this is my book Mind Engine. I've shown it on the channel before. And here we go. New Armageddon Blues. So there's a couple of different science fiction things happening. I do not want to edit album. The thing that I'm thinking of, like, so there's this sort of stuff going on. And there's also this sort of stuff going on. And I think in this world, I think that road car totally would fit. You can see some of the traffic I did in here. So yeah, I'll just say that's where I think I may actually use this. I talked in the other video about, you know, creativity isn't a fixed mechanistic skill controlled directly by one neural circuit. It's an emergent trait that comes out of the complexity of the brain and the ability to synthesize information. It's, I mentioned in the first video, I was going to mention the idea of it being, you know, something you're born with. I'm very dubious about that. I think it's true that you can have traits that give you a bit of an edge. Like, I'm not entirely sure if my patience in drawing is something that really came the way I conceptualized it as being learned, or if it's something that I had some knack and aptitude for before I was even introduced to the concept of mindfulness and meditation. And specifically active meditation. Defining a different shape. Yep. This probably just blends into there. That's fun. So yeah, I was saying creativity is an emergent thing that comes out of a combination of skills and seeds, ideas, experience, exposure, take in ideas, remix them, come up with new things. A lot of that ends up happening when you're feeling particularly creative, what's happening is a lot of that's happening at an unconscious level, and the synthesis percolate up almost unbidden. And it's when people talk about it like, it feels like these ideas were given to me. And if you have a framework that says that there's some sort of higher power, then it's very possible that that'll be how you rationalize that. But which is fine. It's not a criticism. It's just observation. And for me, it's not something that I think in those terms about, but I experience it as just ideas being there after a period of time. I like the way that it breaks the lines a bit. That's why I'm doing this weird boxy thing. Nope. Just keep it simple. Just do like a visible engine bay in the back window. That'd be fun. A vent section for cooling. I got a lot of turmoil right in this area, but I don't care. I like the funky design. I want to balance that arc just a bit. And at this point, I'm definitely feeling out the shape. It's like sculpting with your eyes. You know, for all the lack of internal sensory emulating mental constructs, I have a lot of, it's not synesthesia really, but still kind of like a use of mixed metaphor of my senses. So I do feel like I'm touching the shapes when I'm feeling out the forms for three-dimensional objects. That's good. That explains the air going down there, forcing air into the engine. Haha! It's all just a rationalization, but that's okay. I wouldn't actually see the nose that I've drawn. And you know what? That works better. Yeah. I was trying too hard at that point. I think, now that we're rationalizing things a little bit, I think this needs to raise itself more. I'll give it a nice wicked curve. I like it. Go look at something weird and turn it into something new.